Peter McCullough. Everyone is so excited. It's been way too long since Dr. McCullough has been in the Joy virtual studio. He was on an app. You were on a safari, I believe. I heard a lovely, lovely, restful vacation. Everyone needs that. But now you're back. You're raring to go in a brand new studio. He is likely the most influential leader of the medical freedom movement. He was a critical voice in the early days of lockdown throughout COVID-19, telling the truth about lockdowns and protocols, the vaccines, Operation Warp Speed, vaccine injury and death, variants. He was a critical truth teller. And one of the amazing things about Dr. Peter McCullough, as we moved into a new political atmosphere, a new presidential regime with the election of Donald Trump, he has stayed independent outside of the political fray in Washington, D.C., and is emerging as a very critical voice today. We're going to do a report card on MAHA, among other things. Dr. Peter McCullough, welcome to the show.
Great to be back on the program.
How are you doing?
Doing great. You know, I testified in the U.S. Senate May 21st. A lot of fireworks there between me and Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I took a long planned trip with an entourage. We had guys from South Africa, and we spent time in Tanzania on a safari, 3 of the major national parks. The highlight was the Serengeti, which is, a quarter the size of Texas. You want to talk about a big national park.
Wow.
And go to America Out Loud News and check out the slides and the videos. Everybody should take a safari trip of a lifetime.
Sounds amazing. Well, we're so glad that you're back in the States. You're safe and sound. I want to talk about Chautauqua. You are coming to New York State. This is huge, absolutely huge. July 7th. This is in New York State. I'm going to try to go to this. This is amazing. Tell everyone about what's going on with Chautauqua.
Anybody in the Western New York, Southern Pennsylvania region, Ontario, I know they all follow you, Shannon. Put Chautauqua, New York, 3 p.m. Eastern on Monday, July 7th on your calendar. Let me read for you Chautauqua, which has been a time-honored institution from the late 1900s. Listen who's lectured from the same podium. I'm so honored. Ulysses Grant, Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Bill Clinton, William McKinley, Justice Robert Jackson, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sandra Day O'Connor, Booker T. Washington, and public figures like Toby Keith, Harry Connick, Clay Aiken. I'm so honored to be, a prominent figure in American medicine now. To deliver my points, and they'll be not just on the pandemic, but also on the transgender crisis and the autism epidemic.
Amazing. And this has been a time-honored tradition. It is an intellectual gathering. People present on certain topics, and that sounds amazing. I'm going to try to make it to that 100%. We'll promote it too, because it's right in our stomping ground here in New York State. So we'll push out to everyone. That's amazing. July 7th, 3 p.m. And an amazing lecture series. Well, listen, everyone can see the headline of today's show, report card on the progress. We call it the medical freedom movement, Dr. Peter McCullough. Somewhere along the way, it got turned into MAHA, which is Make America Healthy Again, which, is more about food and supplements and sponsorship deals, it seems, than it is about actually telling the truth about what is causing the health crisis here in the U.S. Let's start there. We are 5 months into the MAHA revolution. Bobby Kennedy is at HHS. Donald Trump is in the presidency. It was supposed to be a golden era. Everyone's going to be healthy again. Let me just let you go. What is your analysis and assessment of the progress over these past 5 months?
Last weekend, I was on stage live at 412 Church in Temecula, California, and it was MAHA 2025. Whew. I was the keynote lecturer. So I started out with the acronym, Make America Healthy Again. And this is important to think about. Let's take adults first. Were adults really healthier in the 1960s, Shannon? What do you think?
I mean, I would guess so. I don't know. I mean, yeah? No?
No, no. The average life expectancy was 69. That would mean
Mhm.
I just have a few years left. Way more than half the population smoked. Nobody exercised. Diets were terrible. No one cared about health. I mean, no, adults weren't healthier back in the 1960s. We're
Interesting.
far healthier now. We actually have the first generation that cares about what they eat, that are actively exercising. I have patients living well into their 80s and 90s doing all kinds of things. So,
Yeah.
no, adults are far healthier now than what
Okay.
they were in the 60s. So, Maha itself is, maybe we could change that to make America healthier. We can all
Right.
do better, but it's a poorly positioned term. Children, very different. Take children in the 1960s, every indicator was that children largely left alone, uh, were far healthier. So rates of autism when I was a kid, 1 in 10,000. Now it's 1 in 31.
Whoa.
Rates of obesity, less than 50%. Now they're 20%. Attention deficit disorder didn't exist. Now it's 11% of the population. So children, the MAHA moniker applies to children, not adults.
Right. Well, and I think the key critical difference that what has frustrated me is that the I think the medical freedom movement was about freedom and choice, informed consent, and pharmaceutical corporations being held liable for their products, governments being held accountable for their protocols, their recommendations, and what they did in the lockdowns of 2020. So all of those things, everything that made the medical freedom movement are all of the things, in my opinion, that are being omitted from discussion today. And we've seen a couple hearings, we have seen a few, some, victories in certain aspects, but it's more about, and even, for example, Robert Kennedy Jr. yesterday saying a big mission of MAHA is to get every American on a wearable biosurveillance device within 4 years, like a massive governmental campaign, ad campaign, and likely I would say a coercive in incentivizing campaigns for insurance companies and medical providers and surgeons and medical doctors to coerce people into wearing these bio tracking devices, which I think I would never wear. Right. But it's like they're going everywhere, but like they're looking at everything but what mattered to us. Do you get that sense, or am I, because people yell at me because I've been pretty spicy lately to Dr. M, as you know, about all of this. And I always get, bashed over the head. Like, give them time. You're too critical. Take the win. Go ahead.
I have to tell you a little funny anecdote about a wearable device. So, one of the first wearable devices was what's called a Garmin watch.
Oh,
Do you remember
okay.
those?
I
These were
do.
these gigantic watches. And so years ago, I embarked on a sojourn to run a marathon in every state in the United States. There have been a few hundred people who had done it.
Okay.
And and I'm a natural runner. I don't wear any jewelry at baseline. I don't have any tattoos, none of that stuff. I'm just completely natural.
100%
And
organic.
everyone was wearing these Garmin watches. So my wife, with her best intentions, she got me this big, huge Garmin watch. And I spent an inordinate amount of time trying to program it and get it set up, what have you. And so I'm wearing this giant watch and I'm running my first marathon. And as I recall, I think I was in New Mexico. And sure enough, we went through a tight turn and there was a bunch of runners that kind of hit each other. So my arms were hitting other runners and somebody hit my Garmin watch and totally reset everything. And it was completely useless. So I wore this appendage for the rest of the race. I took it off. I gave it to my wife. I said, return this thing.
Yeah.
That was hundreds of dollars down the drain. Wearable devices can make an impact if there's an action, but I'm greatly concerned. I mean, who in Robert F. Kennedy's orbit is running a company that's promoting wearable devices? It's
That
the nominee for Surgeon General, Paula Means. She changed her name to, I think, Callie or Casey Means. I get it
Casey.
mixed up, but her name is Paula Means. she actually, she has a direct conflict of interest, and she's right in his circle.
Right. And her company is Levels, and she is the likely nominee for Surgeon General. She had millions of dollars in seed money come into her campaign. And you're right. When Robert Kennedy Jr. makes that statement on Capitol Hill, it goes out to millions and millions of Americans. What does that do to the valuation of a company like Levels? What does that do to the valuation of multiple companies that are now pushing out all sorts of new types of technology? From wearables. I mean, there are a million problems here: privacy, security of information and data. What is the government going to do with this data? Will it be shared? But again, the issues that we care about. You and I co-signed. I co-authored a letter in the fall of 2024. You were the first dignified signatory of that letter, and it was a letter to Donald Trump regarding what was necessary for the medical freedom community for them to give their votes. And we talked about it. We talked about first and foremost removing all mandates. We talked about removing pharmaceutical liability protection, which would
Mhm.
almost solve everything. And then we talked about removing the mRNA shots from the market, because I think the body of evidence is very clear, and you are an expert on this, on what these mRNA shots are doing to human bodies. You continue to see patients. Those are things that would actually be meaningful. Are
But
we
I
are
think
we
there's an
moving?
additional one, Shannon, and that is removal of direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical and vaccine advertising.
That's right. Yep. So there were very specific things that would change everything, particularly removing pharmaceutical liability protection. Are you seeing, you are embedded in this movement? You are watching what is happening in these hearings. You are testifying on Capitol Hill. Are you seeing any movement in those areas that satisfies you, that something is getting done?
Well, let's take Trump's executive orders. The COVID-19 vaccines are so dangerous that in some states like Texas, we've banned COVID vaccine mandates. Yet
Yeah.
we can't have any company in Texas mandate somebody to take a shot and have somebody die. That's how dangerous it is. Well, Trump has come out and said, you know, no mandates in an executive order, but that's for COVID vaccines. Now, I'm a member of the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, AAPS. Anybody who wants to support a good physician organization, aapsonline.org. I support them generously. We
Great.
passed a resolution in the year 2000, 25 years ago, saying that no vaccine should ever be a requirement for school, for employment, university, or the military. Never.
Right.
So complete freedom of choice. Not everyone can take vaccines, and not vaccines are not appropriate for everyone. So this freedom of choice is very, very important. We've seen just a little bit of movement with the Trump executive order. Not on our list, but kind of related, is Trump's executive order to ban dangerous gain of function research. This week, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, head of the National Institutes of Health, did memorialize Trump's executive order in in an issuance that said, listen, the NIH is not paying for any of this. That's a step in the right direction. And on top of that, universities need to do an inventory of their dangerous gain of function research. We have over a dozen level 4 biosecurity labs in the United States. Leaks occur all the time. We've summarized this on the Focal Point Substack. We have one of these labs in Galveston, Texas, at the University of Texas Medical Branch Medical School. So Bhattacharya's executive order, I thought, was very solid. Now, the Gates Foundation or the Chinese Communist Party can still go in and fund gain of function research, and this only applies to the United States. But this is a big step in the right direction.
Mm. Would you say that, and I can attest, Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, first and foremost in New York State, as a parent of children who attend public school, have also attended private Christian parochial schools. The mandates for vaccines are still in place. Children will be thrown out of school, not COVID vaccines, but if they are missing any of the CDC recommended childhood vaccines, they will be thrown out of school. Dr. Bowden, I believe, recently tweeted out that she is continuing to write medical exemptions for children in the state of Texas, which is a red state, and those are being declined by certain school districts, even though she's writing them. So to the point where people say, you know, are mandates still in place? Absolutely. 7 or 8 states still mandate the CDC recommended shots, and therein lies the problem. There is no choice. It is coercion. And so when, you know, this is why it's interesting to note that the CDC, it's that childhood recommended schedule, they, you know, issued all of their new recommendations and they're still in place, right? What do you make of the announcement that the COVID vaccine was removed from the CDC recommendation for pregnant women and infants and children? And so that was kind of the headline, but when you dug underneath the surface, you realize that they were still recommending it for at-risk populations, and pregnancy is designated as at risk, and there are you know, millions of children who would qualify as at risk. So it became muddled and confusing. What do you make of that whole discussion? Because there was a lot of back and forth over that. What is your takeaway?
Well, let me unpack the first part of that. In Texas, and Dr. Bowden and I practice in Texas. In Texas, we have philosophical, medical, and religious exemptions for vaccines. As you know, we have a large Mennonite community in West Texas. They take no vaccines whatsoever.
Okay.
Those exemptions apply to public schools. And what we find is the parochial schools don't honor that.
Wow.
And I'm sure where Bowden is running
Wow.
into problems is when people want their kids to go to private school and they say, sorry, we're a private school, you have to take all the shots. And so she's writing medical exemptions, you know,
Wow.
as she should. Now, other states, New York and California, effectively have no exemption pathway.
None.
They really don't. And so the kids are forced into vaccination. Good news recently reported from USA Facts. USA Facts takes the CDC tabular data, it's a great website, and presents it so you can understand it. You know, you go to the CDC website, you can't figure out things. It's very obtuse. Good news, children under age 2, the national rate of being fully COVID vaccinated, this is very important, through May, 2%.
Wow.
2%. Shannon, parents didn't go for the COVID shots in kids, and even the pediatricians were squeamish about it. And now we have Robert F. Kennedy, FDA Commissioner Macri, and Bhattacharya giving a press briefing saying that the new recommendations, again, as you mentioned, not for children, not for pregnant women, but still high risk in adults. They published a paper in New England Journal of Medicine. This was Macri and Prasad. Now, of interest, these are 2 doctors who early on promoted the vaccines, have never seen or treated a COVID patient by their public statements, and have never seen a vaccine injured patient or reported a vaccine death. So
Wow.
we're talking about 2 doctors, you know, who are not at a level of expertise that you would want in those positions.
Right.
And they publish a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine. It shows you how out of touch they are. They conclude that 1/3 of us as adults should be taking COVID shots.
Unbelievable.
And Shannon, the best that we can tell is less than 15% are even taking them. And to even make this more bizarre, at the end of their press briefing, Robert F. Kennedy victoriously announces, well, by making this move and restricting the use of COVID-19 vaccines, we're going to make America healthier again. So say, wait a minute, let me understand that. Less COVID vaccines makes us healthier. Well, how about no COVID vaccines so we could achieve optimal health? I mean, you know, we came out in such an odd way. Of course, less COVID vaccines makes us healthier because there's going to be hopefully fewer side effects. But as you pointed out and what we put down in writing, the vaccine should have been off the market years ago. The World Council for Health, Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, we published a paper recently, Science, Public Health Policy, and the Law. 17 organizations, physician-led, evidence-based, consensus-driven, say pull the COVID vaccines off the market, not safe for human use.
What is concerning also is the work that has been done by Dr. Naomi Wolf and Sasha Latipova and Mary Bowden and myself. In this new recommendation, they are omitting what they say are healthy people from the recommendation, healthy children and healthy pregnant women, and are essentially targeting unhealthy children, at risk children, children who have autoimmune diseases, children who have chronic disease, children who have autism or diabetes or are at risk, children who would be more likely to suffer an adverse reaction to a vaccine than a normal healthy population of children. And that goes for pregnant women as well. I mean, that was horrifying to us when we realized that though they are reducing by a smidgen, right, that CDC recommendation, they are now targeting the very people who should not be taking these shots in the first place. Your thoughts on that?
You know what's interesting when they came out that recommendation, no more children or pregnant women, uh, that came out at the exact same time the same recommendation came out in New Zealand and multiple other countries. Isn't that
Heartbreaking.
interesting? Why is it all timed together? It shows terrible clinical judgment. Every single paper published show those who already have problems really get problems with COVID shots. I spent time in my office yesterday. This poor man who used to work for a major biomedical company, he had a blood clot and a pulmonary embolism in 2016. His doctors and his employer tells him to take the shots. Guess what? He gets a blood clot with the shots. And even having a blood clot is on blood thinners. They tell him to take a booster.
Oh no.
And we know the spike protein that's produced in huge quantities from the shots is found in the blood clots. It promotes blood clots. So, we would never give a COVID shot to someone who's had a blood clot, someone who's had heart disease, someone who's had severe autoimmune disease. And we certainly wouldn't give it to children with neuropsychiatric disorders like autism or ADHD, because in preclinical studies, the COVID vaccines have actually been linked to autistic behavior in mammalian models.
It's wild. What do you make, and slightly disturbing, to be honest. I mean, that is very bizarre that this is where, what was supposedly a win has ended, right? We also have, um, according to some of the research done by Dr. Bowden, over 500 new mRNA technologies in the hopper for FDA approval within the next 12 months, I believe. And also, Dr. McCullough, a fast tracking, this was approved by Donald Trump via executive order and through HHS, a fast track of self amplifying mRNA to be approved um, as soon as next fall for I believe it's RSV. Your thoughts on that?
No one should receive messenger RNA or self-replicating messenger RNA unless they're in a research protocol with an institutional review board. There's no way to shut off the messenger RNA, Shannon, once it's injected in the body. We now have data in some of my patients using a lab in Germany. People who took the shots in 2021, we can still find Pfizer and Moderna in their body in
My word.
2025. We can't get it out. Once you take an injection, you can't get it out of the body. Listen, I'm not saying messenger RNA can never be used in clinical medicine. Maybe some desperate cancer patients, and there's some new cancer protocol. As long as they're under institutional review board, fine. But they shouldn't be anywhere close to clinical use. We've given our new FDA staffers plenty of time. They have not issued a safety review of the messenger RNA vaccines. That's Pfizer, Moderna, and Moderna has an RSV vaccine as well. They have not published any inspections of the vials to figure out, can they
Right.
actually get a concentration of messenger RNA in, and they are not being radically transparent as RFK promised America.
So that is interesting. You would think there would be all hands on deck, right? We had a crisis. Operation Warp Speed was a disaster. That was the rhetoric of Bobby Kennedy Jr. for years leading up to his joining the Trump administration, right? We have a crisis here, and he moves into office, and they're not even looking into what's in the vials. The makeup of what is being pumped out to the American people under their administration. Somewhere around 25,000 children are being injected with mRNA every day under this administration, and it's astounding to witness the lack of attention to this, right?
That said, if it doesn't get done in the first 100 days, it's not going to get done. We start to see a pattern now of obfuscation, uh, continued conflict of interest. It looks like there's a biomedical deep swamp that is clearly operating in Washington.
Yeah.
Trump, who's getting high marks in many areas, is connected at the hip with Joe Biden on the COVID vaccines.
Yeah.
Trump can talk about any topic, but he crosses off the list the COVID shots. He won't take a question from an open mic. Robert F. Kennedy won't do it. Marty McCreary won't do it. Not a single leader in the world will take a question on the COVID-19 vaccines. We are deep into this. I think everybody should be alarmed. I mean, I'm greatly concerned. USA Facts reports that governments are still buying these vaccines. People aren't taking them, and they're just being poured down the drain. How come Elon
Unbelievable.
Musk's Doge group didn't investigate that waste of money? That's obviously a waste of money. Governments buy these vaccines, they're not used, and they're poured down the drain. Why don't we ask for our money back?
Absolutely. This is very concerning, and we're going to continue this discussion. We're going to take a quick break. I can see that I see on the live chat that Rumble is very glitchy today. And so, of course, Dr. McCullough, when we get going, that's okay. We'll cut this up. We'll cut it into clips. We'll push it out on X. We'll make sure that everyone sees the most important parts of this discourse, because what you're saying is incredibly important. We want discernible policy outcome. We want truth about the COVID shots. We want people held accountable, right, for their role in a mass poisoning of so many Americans in the dark days of COVID. We want these shots off the market. There is plenty of evidence. There are mountains of data points and studies that show that would dwarf any other type of product that has been pulled from the market after a few years of study. But we're not getting that. We're getting 500 new mRNA technologies. We're getting self-amplifying. And when we come back, I want to talk about those conflicts of interest. You mentioned Bobby Kennedy Jr. grilled in that Senate hearing about his proximity to Callie and Casey Means and multiple biopharmaceutical surveillance, wearables, I mean, you name it, tech companies that stand to gain billions, if not trillions, in government contracts as we move forward into the merging, really, it seems to me, of tech and pharma, right? We see in the big, beautiful bill, right? Nothing to address pharmaceutical liability protection, but an expansion of liability protection, very similar to what happened in the 1990s with pharma, into big tech via AI and big chemical. So not only are they not getting rid of liability protections, they're saying, wow, these worked so great for the pharma companies and got them so rich. Let's just expand that to all of our other cronies in AI, big tech, and big chemical. So this revolving door, transparency, radical transparency, which is what Bobby Kennedy was talking about. We're going to go there after the break, because I think this is a very important point. And Dr. McCullough, I think that you're probably one of the most trusted voices in the U.S. Today, and perhaps the world, on this topic, primarily because of your independent position right now. So very important discussion. Keep it tuned right here. Bear with us with the tech difficulties. We're going to get through it, and make sure you share this with everyone you know. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment with Dr. Peter McCullough. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. Today, we are joined by Dr. Peter McCullough. Please follow him on the Twit and support his foundation. His handle is at P_McCullough MD. And let's move to radical transparency. This was the promise of Bobby Kennedy Jr. when he came into his position at HHS. Yesterday, or might have been the day before, Senate testimony, one Senator Jake Auchincloss absolutely grilled Kennedy about his relationship and proximity to the Means siblings, right? Um, Callie Means, the brother, appointed to a special governmental position within HHS, so high level advisory position. Callie's sister, Casey, aka Paula, also slated to be the next Surgeon General of the United States of America, a very powerful position. Both Callie and Casey Means have a vast amount of companies and affiliations with corporations, pharma, biotech, wearables. Casey Means is Levels, that is a wearable company, which Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talked about. Callie Means True Med. This was quite the grilling. You've been talking about the Means and their companies and the proximity. Revolving door means corporate people come into government, then government people go into corporate, and they all scratch each other's back and make each other rich. And this was RFK's criticism of pharma for 20 years. He explained it better than anyone. Yet here he comes in, HHS secretary, and according to Senator Auchincloss, has very serious conflicts of interest now with not only the Means but other you know corporate entities. Your thoughts on this?
Well, let's take the sister, Paula Means, also known as Casey Means. What she presented to the world is that she was a fourth or fifth year ear, nose, and throat surgery resident at Stanford, but she became so disillusioned, as many residents do, as I did, with people not taking care of themselves. She drops out of her residency to write a diet book. Millions of diet books. And then, the LA Times broke the story. They called up her program director and they said, what really happened? And they said, well, she had psychiatric problems. She dropped out.
Wow.
And she never came back. So Dr. Means has misrepresented herself to America. That's the same thing that Jeanette Neshawat, the failed Surgeon General nominee ahead of Means. So now we have 2 out of 2. And I'm a board certified senior doctor, professor of medicine in the past. There's no qualified doctor that's going to respect somebody in the Surgeon General spot who's dropped out of her residency. She's not even qualified to prescribe an antibiotic, for crying out loud. How can she be viewed as the doctor in chief of America? So I think Kennedy would be well positioned to drop her. Trump has already washed his hands. He says he doesn't even know who she is.
Jeez.
So that's her. I think really the correct move is drop her, get a qualified doctor. We're about 6 months now without a Surgeon General. I have met the Assistant Surgeon General, who's a very nice woman. She's qualified. She's a family doctor. And by the way, the second in command right now is a nurse who's very qualified as well. So the office is secure. We just need that MD person who's known to be someone who's right on point. Now on the young Mr. Means, Callie Means, he's in his 30s. He's got a checkered past where he claims to be a pharmaceutical consultant for Purdue Pharma. Remember, Purdue Pharma is the company that paid huge fines for all their infractions, promoting and actually getting patients hooked on OxyContin. I can tell you, as a young man who's a pharmaceutical consultant, a young person, he wouldn't have any advice to offer. He was probably, one of the people who was handing out the pens at the drug promotional meetings, or at least, and that's what quote pharmaceutical consultants do. They're meeting coordinators. They're kind of low level meeting coordinators. Suddenly now he's in a special government position. He has a company that's trying to drain money out of health savings accounts and then take part of it for himself. And he's exposed himself by attacking the wellness company publicly. Our CEO Peter Galuli has exposed all this in Gateway Pundit in the media. He's been reported to DOJ, White House Ethics, HHF Ethics, the committees on both sides, and now, sure enough, Jake Auchincloss in the U.S. House of Representatives holds up a poster showing Means Head connected financially and how he's obviously violating every principle of conflict of interest of a special government employee. So Kennedy would really do himself a service by just breaking ties with the Means family. Remember, Grady Means is the father. He's behind the scenes, well capitalized, orchestrating all this. I think the Means time in Washington is over with. America needs transparency. We don't need another biomedical deep swamp.
Well, and this is one of the reasons I do. And full disclosure, the Wellness Company is not a sponsor of the Shannon Joy Show. I think it's an amazing company. I've had some nice conversations with them, but this is one of the reasons I like the Wellness Company. I mean, they are very committed to not getting entangled in Washington, D.C. through some of the conversations that I've had with them. You were even asked about Wellness Company, and I thought that your statement in your testimony was fire. Complete fire. I mean, it's a company that provides supplements. It provides telemedicine and telehealth. You are very comfortable with their products, and they just, I mean, it's like doesn't even scratch the surface in terms of the revenue generated by these pharma and big tech companies who are tethered to the federal government. Like, it's not even close. And you
Right.
guys
Well,
make some money. Yeah.
Shannon, the wellness company is a company of the people.
Yeah.
We're trying to provide solutions, not only for acute illnesses, but also for this long COVID and vaccine injury syndrome. We
Yeah.
don't take a single government dollar.
Right.
And yet here, Richard Blumenthal, is trying to tarnish me while the government has spent billions of dollars with Pfizer, Moderna, Janssen, Novavax, and gosh knows how many government dollars are now going to TrueMed and levels these entrepreneurial operations being run out of HHS.
Yeah. And it's not just those corporations. I mean, the big tech angle, the merging of pharma and tech is the numbers are extraordinary when you think of what they envision in terms of biosurveillance, right? Stopping the next pandemic through mass biosurveillance, the merging of tech, the creation of, they're saying 5,000 to 10,000 like football fields long data centers hooked up to nuclear reactors to process all of the data that they want to collect on the American people in order to prevent the next pandemic, right? Like,
That visual was overwhelming. Let me tell you, listen, I'm a doctor, I'm in practice. There's a device that we can actually measure pressures in the pulmonary artery. It's actually inserted. It's one of the first kind of biomedical devices. It generates so much data, no one knows even how to interpret it. Pacemakers generate a ton of data.
yeah,
So we're familiar with biosurveillance. It plays a role. Listen, somebody has a pacemaker, fine. Someone, a diabetic on an insulin pump, fine.
right.
But listen, every person getting biosurveillance, you can tell this is going to be an orgy of revenue, particularly if HHS revenue goes to these companies in the biomedical deep swamp.
I mean, you can almost see them salivating over this. Like, we're gonna get, everyone's terrified, everyone's sick. We have them right where they want them, and it's just tragic. It's tragic to watch. What do you make of ACIP? I watched a bit of the ACIP meeting. This is the panel. This was another kind of faux victory, right? Where Bobby Kennedy Jr. came in and he fired all 17 of the big bad ACIP panel members. And these are the people, they don't decide, first and foremost, whether or not a vaccine or pharmaceutical product is fast tracked or approved. That happens with an HHS and the FDA. They
Right.
only deal with already approved vaccines, and they convene a panel to talk about who they should recommend them to, not even who they should recommend them to. That's also done by CDC and FDA. They decide what the dosage should be, how many should be given, and some other things. I don't know exactly, but RFK gets rid of all of them, brings in like the dream team. Everyone thinks like Dr. Malone and Kuhldorff and a few others that have some names within the medical freedom community. They meet yesterday, and I was disgusted like 5 minutes into it. Just listening to their bios, I mean, they're not even, the baseline from my perspective was they are pro vaccine. They are pro vaccine. They want to restore trust in vaccines, and they want to restore trust in government health agencies. And that's kind of their overall. And then they're going to have transparency and research studies and everything, whatever. But I don't know. I was not that impressed by that first meeting. Have you been following this at all, or what are your thoughts on the new ACIP members?
Well, we've been pretty tough on the new administration, but I think with ACIP, like we did with Trump, Kennedy, Macri, and Bhattacharya, we have to give them time. So,
Fair.
for that first grouping, we've given them 6 months. And, by the way, someone caught me as I was walking out of the US Senate, and they said, what grade would you give Donald Trump? I'd say B plus. And they looked surprised.
Yeah.
I said, I want to see better. Remember, no one who works for Trump can demand more of Trump. They have to be subservient to him, and they all are.
Mm,
So only people who are independent like us can do that.
right.
Only we can demand more of our public servants. And when I testified in the Senate, I called Richard Blumenthal a public servant, someone who's serving me. I'm not serving him. He's not a
There you
king.
go.
And Blumenthal got the message. Now we have the new ACIP committee. Let's talk about the old ACIP committee first. The old ACIP committee is 17 people, and they virtually all of them had ties to the vaccine industry, big financial ties. Probably the worst historically was Paul Offit, University of Pennsylvania professor. Listen to this. He's a patent holder and inventor of the rotavirus vaccine.
Wow.
So what he does when he's on the committee, he ushers in the class of rotavirus vaccines, not his. And so the first ones come up, and they actually make the kids sick. They cause a problem called intussusception. So the first rotavirus vaccine is pulled off, and now Offit's vaccine is in the wings. It's installed, and he makes a fortune because
Wow.
he's on the panel now that's said every child has to take a rotavirus vaccine. Listen, my kids grew up, they didn't take rotavirus vaccines. They're perfectly fine. So that's off it. That's how bad this panel was. But the panel has been around since the 60s. It's actually under federal law. So it's actually federal guidelines run it. It has 29 liaison committees, including the American Association of Pediatrics, American College of Family Physicians. It's got a charter. It's not independent of the government at all. In fact,
Wow.
the CDC director used to be the chairman of it. And, so they get rid of the old members. And by the way, the old members now have written editorials in New England Journal of Medicine and JAMA and also Internal Medicine, all lamenting the
Yeah.
fact that they were dismissed. They're probably lamenting their vaccine contracts going away.
That's right.
Right. So now that new members are chosen, we're not seeing people who are highly published. To give you an example, I have 700 listings in the National Library of Medicine. As credentials to understand data and analysis, whatever. There's nowhere committee nowhere close to that. No one who's been on a data safety monitoring board. No one who's seen and examined patients for COVID-19 or treated COVID-19 vaccine injuries, syndromes, seen a child with autism. So now we have this new panel and they're not fully constituted. I published a Substack on this. They're very lightly published. They're not going to be, it's really the worst of all the worlds. They're not going to be respected by the academic community because they don't have any big time people on the committee. Uh,
Right.
and they're not fully constituted. And many of them historically have ties right back to the vaccine developers. So,
Mhm.
as soon as they get into a position of power, you wait for that biomedical deep state to become reestablished now in vaccines, and we could be worse off.
It really is absolutely astounding, how little we are accomplishing right now. What would you give? You are very generous to Donald Trump. I think I would give him like a D minus. But you know
Oh,
what? We welcome all sorts of opinions here on the Shannon Joy Show. But what would you say? Well, the title of today's show, it is the report card. What would you say the report card is now for Maha, Bobby Kennedy Jr. and his administration in your opinion?
well, we laid out the objectives, right? COVID-19 vaccines off the market. That didn't happen. Dissolution of all medical or vaccine mandates, by law. That hasn't happened. Liability, protections withdrawn. That hasn't happened. Direct to consumer advertising being dropped. Last night, my wife told me every commercial she saw on TV was a drug commercial.
It is.
That hasn't happened. So what have we seen? Where's the activity? We've seen activity on uh, red and yellow food dyes. Some kind of lower level things. Fluoride in the water, things that have been around for decades. Now I don't know about you, Shannon, but I didn't have my kids eating Starburst or Fruit Loops or Skittles.
Only
It's
on
just,
special occasions.
you know what I mean? It's like, so if you were to ask me, what keeps you awake at night? Well, why are people coming into your office? It's not because of red or yellow food dye. It's because they took a COVID shot and now they have heart damage or a blood clot.
This is the other area that is really the most disturbing to me, Dr. McCullough. It is the complete ignoring and borderline gaslighting of the millions of Americans who have been harmed with debilitating injuries from these shots, and the families of people who died, who have autopsy reports, who are verifiably, um, you know, killed from these shots. And it is a very strange spot to be in, where this administration, HHS and the Trump administration, just ignoring them like they don't exist. It's cruel. I think about it every single day. They have no help. They have no money. They have no studies. They have no awareness by the public at large. They go to their doctors and they become gaslit by their own doctors. Robert Kennedy Jr. can't, through the CDC, issue guidance to medical doctors across the country saying, hey, this is what you want to look for in a COVID vaccine injury case. This is where you might want to direct a patient if they believe they've been injured by the COVID vaccine. From the CDC, couldn't Bobby Kennedy Jr. say to medical doctors, you have to post the ingredients list and the vaccine inserts. You have to give your parents and patients informed consent about not only the COVID vaccines, but the childhood vaccines as well. How many parents would make a different decision if they saw the product list, if they saw potential adverse reactions, when they are actually given the freedom to choose by giving them informed consent? I mean, this is such low hanging fruit. This is something that Bobby Kennedy could get up on a podium and say tomorrow to the American people, using the power of the bully pulpit, which is so powerful, yet they don't do it.
Shannon, if I was in any one of these three power positions, president, HHS secretary, or FDA commissioner, the COVID vaccines would have been off the market under my watch.
Yes.
So we have Trump and Biden perfectly aligned on the COVID vaccines. Trump wants to be, a maverick. He wants to be independent. He doesn't want to be anywhere close to Biden. Yet with the vaccines, they're buddies together in
That's
bed.
right.
I would have pulled these off the market if they were on the market under my watch. Immediately, they get black box warnings for fatal side effects. We have a Senate hearing on May 21st, 2025. I present the data. It's in the Senate record. The
So
vaccines
good.
cause fatal myocarditis. The entire panel agrees, yet the FDA, doesn't have a black box warning saying you can die from taking a COVID shot.
You handed that to Kennedy on a silver platter. You have testimony. It is right there for him to move on. Macri, Bhattacharya. It's just tragic, utterly tragic.
They have a long ways to go. And as time goes on, people will just become more angry. We need a giant Manhattan Project on COVID vaccine injuries, disabilities, and deaths. The Biden administration commissioned $1 billion on long COVID research, never considered the vaccines, never considered the spike protein. So, as you can imagine, they didn't study the problem and they came up with zero answers, no new drugs, no protocols, no direction. Patients are furious.
Yeah, and they should be. Dr. Peter McCullough, I want to respect your time. We contracted for an hour. I so appreciate you, and I know that you're busy. Thank you for your leadership. I so appreciate you. You have been stalwart. You have always been there for us when we need it. When we need a signature for our letters, when we need someone to come in with gravitas, someone who has the bona fides and the experience that you do to come in, you're always there. And you know me, I watch closely and I watch over time, and you have been such a great friend. So I cannot wait to see you again. In Where are we going to be? Chat. What is it? I'm going to murder the name.
Chautauqua. Chautauqua, the time-honored dialectic, the place where leaders of America from the late 19th century have lectured, and they've freely given their different opinions. We've had Supreme Court justices, U.S. presidents, and now I'm honored as a physician in the public health arena to give, I think, probably the first Chautauqua lecture on the topic of pandemic response, transgenderism, and autism.
Amazing, amazing. And I'm going to try to be there. That is Monday, July 7th, 3 p.m. Eastern time, right outside of Jamestown. So this is right in my backyard here in New York State. And so I haven't looked at the calendar, but I'll move mountains to come and watch you speak. I think this will be really exciting. And so is there a website or anywhere that people can go to get tickets or find out more information? Will you be posting it on any of your socials or your website?
I'll post it on my socials, but you can go to the Chautauqua Institution website. It's a very prominent website. Show up and get tickets, get a free copy of my book, Courage to Face COVID-19. It's been, I think the best book in the class, certainly has the highest level of writing by historian John Leake. And, it's 5 years too late, but it's great that Chautauqua gave me the
That's
invitation.
right.
When I went on Joe Rogan, kind of set all his records, he was 2 years late. People have forgotten how the lateness was going on. You and I were there early, speaking out early in 2020. We knew something was wrong, and we knew we had to do something about it.
Absolutely, 100%. And we're going to continue to do that, right? We don't give up. That's the point. You're not going to get radical transparency from HHS or Kennedy or Trump, but you're going to get it here on the Shannon Joy Show, and you're going to get radical transparency from Dr. Peter McCullough as well. It's why we love him. And yes, we just keep chugging along because the truth is our guide, and we're not going to give up. And so I think it's amazing that you're going to be honored with this speaking position, and can't wait to see you. So thank you, Dr. Peter McCullough.
Thank you.
Okay.